Welcome back, guys, to the Lynn's Handmade Designs YouTube channel. Today I want to introduce you to the Rick Rolltop backpack. I love this backpack, and as you'll notice in my hands, I'm carrying two different sizes. This is the petite, this is the standard. And as this name implies on this size, this is more a traditional sized backpack. You'll notice as I turn them on their sides, the main difference is a wider zipper pocket and then also a wider base, which would allow for much more storage capacity. I love this size for a first backpack, maybe a preschooler or a young elementary age kid, or a day trip. You know, you're just walking around a festival and you won't want a huge backpack. It does still carry quite a bit. It's just a little bit more petite than the standard. Let's go over those features. So as you've probably noticed, it does have elasticized pockets on both sides to fit your water bottle. Each side pocket does zip open to show a lined pocket, very spacious inside as well. Put easy, quick stuff you want to access in this pocket. So pencil pouch, sunglasses, stuff like that. Flip it around and you do have a back pocket that goes against your back, so it's more hidden, a little more anti-theft. This is probably where I would typically put my wallet or cell phone. As you can see, it's got that roll top style closure, so you open that up. It is very spacious and roomy inside. It does have that slip pocket on the inside as well. Now on this petite size, I don't know if you've noticed, but I did add a sternum strap. And if you've ever worn a backpack with a chest strap here, you'll notice it makes such a difference in the comfort and wear of your backpack. It distributes the weight evenly among your shoulders, and it really just kind of helps make it more comfortable. So that is the size of the petite. I'm 5'5" for reference. Let me show you the large, standard size. Close that up. This one does not have this chest strap, but I did add the accent webbing so I could add one later if I change my mind. I would encourage you to add these accents because I think you're going to change your mind too. All the supplies and materials that I will be using in this video, including what thread I'm using, machine I'm using, where to get this adorable custom panel, will all be listed in the box below with links and descriptions. I'll also type in the timestamps, so if you need to skip ahead because you're good on that section, just go to the section that you need. Being that this is one of the biggest patterns in my catalog, we're going to take this project down to the floor. So being a backpack, I'm a firm believer that I want to use really solid, good materials for this project because I don't want it to get stained with use, with the elements and all that other stuff. So today's project, I'm using a water-resistant canvas. This is a cute custom design from K&A Custom Fabrics, who designed this backpack for me. So I'll post a link in the description below if you're interested in getting your own custom design for this. But the entire backpack is made out of this water-resistant canvas. So we have not added interfacing to any of the pieces. The only pieces that will get the interfacing is for the bottom base because we want that stability to support the bottom of the bag. Other fabrics that would be perfectly great for a backpack would be like a bonded nylon, a regular nylon, although I would warn you of that. You want a thicker nylon, but it frays really bad and it can be kind of shape-shifty. So if you're new to sewing or new to bag making, that could be a tricky fabric to work with. But new bonded type nylons, water-resistant canvas, waterproof canvas, a thicker ripstop, all of those are ideal for this backpack. If you do choose to do something that's not water resistant like quilting cotton or a canvas, you will want to interface all those pieces with a mid-weight interfacing and also probably add some fusible fleece to those exterior pieces for durability. Now I have rated this an intermediate pattern mainly because of its size. We're using the thicker durable materials, and some of the materials or hardware that we're going to use may not be something that a brand new bag maker would have in their arsenal. But as you see in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step, and none of the steps are actually like hard. There's just a lot of steps and a lot of pieces, but it comes together so satisfyingly, and each step is just gets you more and more excited for the end product. Really quickly before we start sewing, I do want to point out the hardware that we will be using for this backpack. You will need 2 ladder lock buckles, just like this, and then you will need an adjustable side release buckle. So to know that it's adjustable, you have at least 2 slots on one side. Some buckles have 2 slots on both sides. That would be perfectly fine. What you want to avoid are the ones that just have a single slot on each side. You won't be able to adjust it for that style. So just make sure you have the one with 2 slots and then the 2 ladder lock buckles. Optionally, we can do a sternum strap at the end, which I really love, I'm a big fan of, but you do need some specialty hardware for that. These are tri-glide slides and a narrower side release buckle that is also adjustable. Now, there's a company that I've partnered with, Georgia Girl Stitches, who is offering kits pre-made, ready to go, that you could just order that and then have that sternum webbing and hardware needed for that, so you don't have to go buy it in piecemeal. But I would encourage you to at least give it a try, because I think you're going to really like the sternum strap. Since we're using nylon webbing for this pattern, what we want to do is we want to heat seal these edges real quick by running a lighter over it. It does prevent it from kind of unraveling or fraying over time and reinforces those ends. So make sure you heat seal all the ends of the cut ends as well as your zippers. So as part of our prep work, we are marking the centers along the bottom and top of this front main body piece, as well as the land markings along the curve here, top and bottom of all of the rectangles, as well as the top and bottom markings on our bottom base. I've also gone ahead and fused some decovil heavy to the bottom of these. Now I'm going to go take it to the sewing machine and just kind of sew it in place so that the decovil heavy does not pull away during the turning process in a later step. So to just stitch this on, I'm going to roughly just eyeball it and go 1 inch from the edge all the way around. If you're using 2 different threads, colors for your bobbin and your top, it wouldn't be important to sew from the top if you're more mindful of the top thread color. But for this one, I've got the same in the bobbin as I do in the top, so I'm just going to go ahead and start stitching all the way around. Again, this step is just to prevent this decovil heavy from pulling away when we turn it, so it doesn't have to be exactly towards the edge or however you want, just so that it looks nice in the end. I do like to leave my thread tails long and then pull it to the back so it looks like one continuous stitch. Give that one a gentle tug as well. It forms a little loop. So you can pull your threads through. So now it looks just nice continuous stitch with no back stitching. So I will knot these off, singe them with my lighter, and repeat this process with the other piece. Now we're going to go ahead and prep our zippers. We do first need to add our zipper pulls onto our zipper tape. So I'm just going to get this last one threaded on here real quick. And then I usually just pull it close to one end so that I know that this is the correct side when I go to install my zipper. So you've got rectangle zipper tabs that will go with this smaller zipper, and then you have these angled tabs that will go with these larger zippers. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the short ends and lie it face down on top of the zipper tape. I've already marked my seam allowance. And then I'm just going to go ahead and attach the zipper tabs to all of my zippers at the same time. And then just to kind of keep things moving, what I like to do is I'll just fold the opposite end and then chain them all together and clip them at the end. Now, if you've made any of my other patterns, you may notice sometimes I'll use 2 zipper tabs to sandwich the zipper, and this time I'm just using 1. The zipper portion is so narrow at these, where the tab is, that I found I don't really need a lining piece of these tabs, so we're just going for simple. I'm going to just snip all of these. We're going to press the zipper tabs out, away from the zipper, and top stitch. Last step is we want to fold them in half, zipper tab to zipper tab, lining up that portion. I do find this easier with the zipper open. Lining up those tabs and find the center portion on your zipper tape. I will either mark it with pins or give it a little snip with my scissors, just like that. And do that with the other two zippers as well. For this next step, you want to grab your mesh, 2 pieces of mesh, and then the 2 pieces of the 1-inch fold over elastic. Now, people are asking me, what is sport mesh? Sport mesh basically is found in those utility fabric section of the fabric store. This one's a little bit stiffer and thicker than, say, the by Annie stuff. This is considered a lightweight mesh. You can still use it. Some of my testers used it because it comes in really fun colors. Unfortunately, the sport mesh I can really only find in white, gray, and black. But the thing I want you to be mindful of is that these lighter weight ones have really big stretch going in one direction and just slight stretch in the opposite direction. So you do want to cut the width of the pocket going with the stretchy side of your material. Now I have this fun little woven label that I want to add to my side pocket, so I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half to find the center of my pocket, and then I'm just going to clip to kind of mark it as the center here, so that when I add my elastic, then I can know where the center is. So to start, I'm going to start on the right-hand edge and fold the elastic over the top long edge. Remember, it's wider than it is tall. So we're going to fold it over that top edge, and I'm just going to give it a few tacking stitches on this one side, and then we're going to flip it around. But for the elastic, especially if this is your first time doing it, it can take some practice, let's just say that. So I prefer to use a matching thread so that it doesn't draw attention to my potentially wonky stitches. So really quickly, I'm going to swap out to black threads so it'll match my elastic. So I'm on the right hand side here, just going to sew a couple of stitches here just to tack it in place. So now I'm going to pull the opposite end of the elastic to the opposite end of that long straight edge and sew a few tacking stitches as well. Now leave the needle in the down position, and now we're going to go ahead and tug on the elastic so that we can tuck the rest of this mesh into that fold. So you have to give it some nice tension here in order to pull it the full length. And then just carefully make sure it's all butted up into that fold. Okay, so kind of peel it back, make sure it's tucked in nice and tight up in there. And then I'm going to take my label and put it right where I marked the center. Okay, so now I'm going to put my needle is down, but now I'm going to continue to sew as I'm pulling with my right hand. This end, I do need to go a little bit further so that I can grab the opposite end with my hand here. So I'm pulling it from the back and guiding it through the front with my right hand as I'm pulling it taut along the mesh. Okay. So that first part is done. Now you can take a water bottle and spritz this and hit it with your iron briefly to kind of shrink the elastic back if it ends up really wonky and wavy, or just do the steam setting on your iron. I don't have the steam set in my iron, so I'm just gonna just lightly touch that. Help your elastic shrink back into place. All right, let's move along. Now it's super important when you cut out the side zipper pockets that you cut the exterior pieces mirrored, so you could see they are going the correct way to be installed for the zipper. So you've got them right sides together, you cut them out as one. Now you need two lining pieces, and this is how, when you unzip the bag, or the side pocket, what you're going to see. This is going to line the front wall here, and this will line the back wall just like this. So these are also cut mirrored as well as these. So it's super important to keep your left pieces and your right pieces separated so that you don't get them confused. Because ultimately we want to make sure when we install our zipper that it opens from the top down and we don't get confused where now, oops, we got them all confused and I used the wrong piece and now this is how my front's going to be. Let's avoid that. So keep your right and your left hand piles separated. So now I'm going to take my pocket and I'm going to lay it down on top of one of the side exterior pieces of the side zipper pocket. So I do want my side pocket to be blue, so I grab that piece. So we're going to start in the bottom corners, and we're going to start at the top corner. And then we're just going to continue to clip the sides, and as you can see, the mesh pocket is much wider than the side zipper pocket. So we're just going to let it naturally fall into a pleat that it wants to form along the bottom. The important part is that they're equal and they're at least 3/4 inch from each edge. So just going to shimmy this over a smidge. Make sure I've got all layers along the bottom lined up with the bottom edge. Clip that in place. I'm going to finish clipping this pocket along the sides, and I'm going to repeat with this one where it will naturally follow the same desire to form its own pleat, and we're just going to make sure that it looks pretty symmetrical with that one. I have my two mesh pockets prepped, so now I'm just going to go ahead and attach it to this exterior side zipper pocket by sewing 1/8 inch from this edge here. Now I'm starting and stopping at these edges, so I naturally reinforce that portion, which is important. When I come along the bottom here, again, I want to make sure I've got all layers lined up with this bottom. And as I'm sewing over it, I'm just going to kind of do some reinforcement stitches over those pleats by back stitching as I go. And finish up this side. Again, I want to reinforce up at this elastic portion, so I'm going to back stitch well here. There we go. I'm going to repeat with the second pocket, and these mesh pockets will be done. I'm going to add the webbing to the front portion of our closure. So I'm going to remove this piece. This is going to be on the back part of the bag. This is going to be on the front part of the bag. So just make sure that you're dealing with the front of the clasp versus the back. So this is right side facing up. I only need one of the shorter pieces of webbing, so I'm going to set the other one aside. So we're going to take the end of the webbing and thread it through the top slot, just like this, and we're going to come back down through the bottom slot. Now, just to make sure I have the correct side up, when I give this a tug, it should lock in place. A quick and easy way to tell if you've done it wrong is if you had it face up the wrong way and you gave it a tug, it would pull right out. So just keep checking your buckles every step of the way to make sure that you are getting a lock, because that is really important in a bag closure. So once this is threaded through, I'm going to go ahead and fold this bottom end under a 1/4 turn and then repeat with another 1/4 turn and stitch that fold. Just like that. And we'll stitch. But you know what? I think I want this side to show. I'm going to rethread it. Okay, I like that one better. So now I'm going to go ahead and just tack this folded edges with some stitches. I did decide to just stick with black thread because I feel like it's going to blend in the areas I want it to blend and not really highlight any potential wonky stitches, but also I hope that you guys will be able to see it better than the rainbow in this video. Back stitch well at the beginning and end. All right, so this is the front portion. Now I'm going to take the other piece that's small, and I'm going to go ahead and clip it in place just so I can keep track of the right side versus the wrong side if it is hard to tell. So we're going to take the second piece and we're going to go ahead and go from the top to the back. Now I'm going to do at least a 1-inch fold like this and then lay it down on itself. We can sew either a row of stitches here and a row of stitches there, or you can go ahead and sew an X-box. An X-box is typically more of a sturdy reinforcement stitch, but I will admit that sometimes it can look wonky on the tight weave of a seatbelt or nylon webbing. So do what you're comfortable with. So today I'm just going to go ahead and do a stitch up here and a stitch down there. For this next step, we're going to prep our backpack straps. So you will need your 2 pieces for the backpack straps, the extra long pieces of the 1-inch webbing, and then 2 pieces of foam. That's the Pellon Flex foam. It could be fusible or not. Doesn't matter because it will not be fused. I don't know about you, but I've always dreaded backpack straps, and having to write this pattern so that it was reproducible and we can all have a great result really pushed me to get creative and kind of fine-tune this process. And now, if I'm honest, it is my favorite part of this backpack. I just set the other pieces aside because what we're going to do is start with folding the backpack strap pieces in half lengthwise, lining up these edges. We're going to take these pieces to the sewing machine and we're going to sew this long edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Roll the seam to the center and I'm going to press it well, both of the seams to one side. We're not going to split it and press it open, but we want it right down the middle here. And I'm just going to give it a quick press with the iron, just kind of help that seam want to fold that way when we go to turn the strap out in just a moment. We'll repeat that with the second one. All right, now we're going to take the long strip of webbing and I'm just going to go ahead and thread it into the tube here. And we're going to leave 1 inch of it overhanging from the top here, just like that. It's going to be centered on this end here. And then we're going to take a piece of the foam and line up the short tapered end with the edge of the backpack strap. We're going to clip this all in place. And then I'm just going to sew right across the foam and the webbing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, just right here, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, just sewing across the foam only at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to tack all 3 layers together. Now I'm going to use my foam as my guide here, and I'm going to drop my needle right next to it where it stops at the point, go up to my stitching, across the stitching, and back down here. And it should end at the same spot. So if you want to kind of put a clip so you can keep it equal on both sides, you can do that. But that's what I'm going to do right now. Right at the point there. So I'm going just next to the foam. I'm not going through it. Only portion that's going through the foam is this stitching we just did. So it's just next to it. So this is what it should look like so far. Now I'm just going to trim down the seam allowance and kind of get close to this top edge here, but I'm not cutting the foam and I'm not cutting the webbing at all. But I will cut these little ears at the top here off, just to kind of reduce bulk in this area. Do not cut the webbing. Okay, so here's my favorite part, and I'm going to take this to the floor to show you a little bit better. Now, depending on your material, if this is waterproof canvas, water-resistant canvas, it's not ripstop, you might want to put your hair dryer in the end here to kind of get it really soft and malleable so that it turns easier. So I'm going to blast it with heat first, and then I'm going to show you how we turn this right side out. All right, so I put the foam headed that way, and now I'm going to give this excess webbing a tug and pull it this way. So we need to get it to kind of start pulling on itself. You might have to give it that a little extra hand, but that's why if this is the waterproof canvas, you want to blast it with the heat to get it going. So just going to tug that a little bit to get it started. There we go. So now I'm going to leave the foam just kind of laying there as I gently pull this over it. I'm gently pulling it until I can get a hold of this bottom portion, and then I'm a little bit more aggressive as I push it towards the end. So this is the part I was mentioning, hoping that by pressing the seam beforehand, it will all naturally just pick a side to lay down to, and it won't be half on one side, half on the other. So we're just going to kind of straighten this out so the seam's going up the middle. Pull out the corners here a little bit. You can give this end here a hammer to kind of really flatten out that foam. And we're going to take it to the iron and press it. I've given my strap a nice press, and I've noted which way the seam is going, so it's going to that side. So we're going to be top stitching on the seam side here. So, but before we start our top stitching, we're going to measure from this bottom edge here up 1.5 inches, and I'm going to place a mark right where I'm going to do my top stitching here. Okay, so starting along the top edge, what we're going to do is we're going to sew on the side of the seam allowance just next to the seam. We're not going to sew in the ditch because it can look really wonky. We're just going to sew next to it, going all the way down. As soon as we get down here, we're going to go across, up. We're going to stop with our needle down at this corner here, go up to our marking there, stop with the needle down, pivot here, stop with the needle down, come back down here, and finish with our stitching down here. I want to drop my needle right in my stitching there. So I just kind of make sure I can hand crank it. I lift my foot really high so that I can drop it down. Then I pivot while my needle is in the down position. Each time you stop to pivot, make sure your needle is always down. There we go. Let's repeat with the second strap. Just finished both backpack straps, so now we're going to measure 4 inches from the bottom of this edge here, and we're going to separate this webbing into two. Now I kept it the one piece because it definitely helps turning the backpack strap. Kind of made all the difference for me and was an aha moment. So I wouldn't cut these beforehand. Okay, so now we just need to heat seal both those ends, and we're going to add our ladder lock buckles. All right, so I'm going to take the pieces I just cut and I'm going to set them aside for a later step. So now we're going to work with our ladder lock buckles here. So hopefully yours looks similarly to mine. I can tell the right and the wrong side based on this concave portion here and this flat portion on the opposite side. So it's important that you identify which one is the front side. So if yours look like mine, the flat side is the correct side. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and loop going from the front to the back along this top bar, and we're going to do a double fold to the back and stitch it in place. This part isn't going to be locked or adjusted, so we can go on this top bar, but if your ladder lock buckle is like tapered along this top edge and you can't wrap it around this bar, you could go from the back over this bar and do your double fold and sew this way, just like that. All right, so I have them threaded, the two options. I'm not keeping them opposite like this. I'm going to do mine this way, but I wanted to show you how it looks both ways. So if you flip it over to the back side, the double fold edge comes to the bottom of the strap here, as well as this one. I do find that I have a little bit more margin for sewing, and I can get closer to this top bar with my sewing if I go through this top edge, whereas this one, it's kind of tough to get close because my bar ends up being kind of in the way. But there's not a right or a wrong way for this section. The other thing I do want to point out is that the right side of the buckle face up is the right side of the strap. So the seam is along the back side. Okay, so now I'm going to unthread this so that they're uniform, and we're going to go ahead and do our 2 rows of stitches. Now you can skip this next section if you have no intention of adding a sternum chest strap to your bag. However, I would encourage you to add these pieces because if you change your mind, you can always add the tri-glides after, but if you don't, it's a real pain to kind of unstitch stuff or add it after the fact. And it just looks cool. If you decide, oh, I don't need the sternum strap, it still looks like a nice added element and it reinforces these straps. So go ahead and grab the strap accent pieces you cut. This would be an additional cut to what the you cut in the beginning. This is the, it's shorter than the pieces we lopped off. Those are longer, so don't get those confused. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but your measurements will be off at the end. So grab the accent pieces. First step is I do need to measure up 1 1/4 inch from this point, and we're on the front of the strap, so the seam is along the back. So here we go, we're going to mark it right here. Now, if you have a correct side and a wrong side of your webbing, like this one, it's beautiful either side, but I need to determine what side I want up. So I want this side to be the portion that's going to be facing up, so I need to lay it face down and line up this edge of the webbing with the marking here. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch just on the webbing and backstitch well right here. Backstitch well at the beginning and end here, not going beyond your webbing. Okay, so now with it laying in front of you, you're going to finger press it over that fold really well and lay it down on that center seam here. So I'm just going to use some clips to kind of hold that fold, and then we are going to measure and mark every 3 inches. So this is a little confusing because this isn't a true accurate 1 inch. So I'm going to pull it down to my measurement along here, and I'm going to measure every 3 inches, and I'm just going to place a little clip here. Yeah, Hopefully you aren't OCD. This is going to drive you crazy. All right, so now at every mark here, we're going to sew a row of stitching. We're not going to sew the fold, just starting with the first one away from the fold. Back stitch well at the beginning and the end, just staying on the webbing, and do all of these marks. Well done. I think that is so cute. I love that little added detail. So even if you're not doing a sternum strap, I would encourage you to go ahead and add that accent webbing because it's really, really cute. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the sternum strap construction, so you can jump to the next time step if you're skipping that section. For the sternum strap, we are going to need these special little tri-glides. This portion that goes across the chest is 3/4 inch that I'm using today, so my webbing is also 3/4 inch. This portion that's going to be attached to our strap accent is a 1-inch channel. That's why we use the 1-inch webbing for our backpack straps. So because the chest strap is 3/4 inch, we need a 3/4 inch buckle. And I did mention earlier that it will be adjustable because it has the 2 slots. Now I've chosen to use this style tri-glide because it's got the slot in here so that it is adjustable. If you sew to sell, or if you're interchanging your backpack between family members, you can remove this and adjust the strap based on where it fits you best. So I would encourage you to get the ones with the slot to make it removable. If they have no slot on here and it's all one fixed piece, you will need to slide it on in your desired position before you stitch that accent down. So this portion is actually quite simple to do. We're going to start with the smaller piece of webbing and one of the tri-glides, and we're going to thread a short end through the chest portion from the top to the back. We're going to fold it back a 1/2 inch and do a 1/2 inch double fold and clip that in place. Now we're going to take this end and we're going to thread it through the slot on the right hand of the buckle. If you happen to have 2 slots on both sides, it'll be on the outermost slot. Otherwise, we're leaving the adjustable portion to the left. So I'm going from the top through to the back. I'm going to do a double 1/2 inch fold again and butt it up with the other side of the fold, just like that. Now we're going to take the longer piece of the webbing and we're going to thread it from the back side of the channel closest to the right side. So come up from the back, you're going to go around that center bar and back down. Now I'm making sure that it's got tension and it locks, so I'm tugging both ends and it's not budging, so I know that it's been threaded right. We're going to take that short end we just threaded over the bar and fold it a 1/4 inch to the back side and clip. So this is what we've got so far. Now we're going to take this end and thread it through the second tri-glide, going front to back. We're going to do a 1/2 inch double fold and clip it to the back side, just like so. Here's what you're left with. So now I'm tugging from both ends, it's locked in place. I'm going to now take it to the sewing machine, and each place there are clips, I'm going to sew a row of stitching at those folds. Right here and there. Then your sternum strap will be done. Now we're going to prep the top and the bottom strap anchors. So for this top portion, what we're going to do is flip it over to the wrong side. We're going to measure up a 1/2 inch and draw a line along both long edges. Now, because I am using a synthetic type material, I'm going to use double-sided tape along just below that line, and I'm going to fold these long edges to that line. If you're using canvas or quilt cotton, that I don't recommend, you can use a craft glue stick and then press with your iron, and it will work just as well in holding these folds in place. So fold that long edge just to the line. And then I have my little poly nail roller here, so I'm just going to go ahead and press that so they stay positioned. So that part is prepped and ready to go. Now, as part of the prep work, you did take that perfect square and you cut it diagonal across the center there. So now we have two pieces. These are the portion of webbing that we cut from our straps previously. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these bottom strap anchors, we're going to fold it along that long edge and find that center crease. I'm going to take one end of the webbing and I'm going to drop it right in at that fold, leaving a 1-inch overhang along that edge here. Just going to clip this in place, holding everything along that fold. I'm going to repeat with this strap. Fold it along that long edge. Find your center crease, just drop it down in, butting up against that edge and clip. Now we're going to go ahead and just sew along this edge using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to trim off this little tail here on an angle, just like that. Unclip that, and I'm just going to pull this back right side out. Line up the seam here, just like that, and clip, just like that. I'm going to sew along the perimeter using a 1/8 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to go back up a 1/4 inch away and do another seam allowance away from that. This is going to be a high stress point because it's carrying the weight of the backpack. So we want to reinforce our straps as much as possible. And that 1-inch overhang is super important because we don't want it to pull out over time if we put it right up against that edge. Next up, we are going to assemble the back panel, but we're going to mainly be creating this bottom back zipper pocket. So you have your bottom piece, the top piece, and 2 pocket liners. Be mindful of your pieces if they are directional. So you can see this little guy's face. I want to make sure that I'm working in the correct orientation here. Now, I'm a big fan of 1/8 inch double-sided tape for zipper installs because it's narrow enough to stay out of my seam allowance, but it really helps prevent things from shifting in place when I go to install a zipper. So I'm going to go ahead and lay a strip of double-sided tape along the top edge of this back zipper pocket portion. part of our prep work, we did add a center notch here and a center notch on our zipper. I'm going to open my zipper a little bit, but I want my pull to the left. And this is personal preference. If it opens from the right to the left, it's not wrong. I just like consistency, so I'm going to keep my zipper pulls all to the left. So I'm going to take that center marking we created earlier. I'm going to place it right down on the center of this back zipper pocket, and the zipper tabs do hang over the edge a little bit here. And then I'm going to take another piece of double-sided tape. I'm just going to lay it on this side. If you don't like the double-sided tape or you're avoiding it because your machine doesn't like it, go ahead and base this zipper in place to keep it from shifting before this next step, an 1/8 inch from the edge. So I'm going to take one of the pocket liners and lay it face down centered on your zipper here, just like this. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this zipper install. I'm feeling for my zipper pull. I'm coming up on it now, so I want to drop my needle in the down position and move my pull out of the way and finish the edge. Okay, now I'm going to press the panel away from the zipper and the lining here away from the zipper. Give it a good finger press here. And then we will top stitch below the zipper an 1/8 inch on this bottom back pocket. Just going to trim off these excess on the zipper tab so it is flush with this bottom zipper pocket. So now I'm going to go ahead and add the second piece of the lining and the back exterior. Just added some double-sided tape here. So again, being mindful of a directional print, I want this going that way. So I'm going to lay this down on front, lining up those center notches and the zipper tabs here. Press it in place. This is where you would baste it if you're not using double-sided tape. I'm going to flip this over and add the second zipper pocket liner centered over the zipper. We are going to sew this a 1/4 inch again, and then we are going to just flip only the back exterior up and away and top stitch along this top edge. I'm going to flip the panel over and we can see that one of the pocket liners is longer than the other, so we're just going to go ahead and trim it so it's equal. I'm going to use some double-sided tape to go ahead and fold these bottom edges to the wrong side. You could also use the glue stick if you're using the quilt cotton, or clips, but we just want to prep this bottom edge. This is where we are going to turn the bag through at the end. So we are going to leave this bottom edge unsewn for now. So fold it 3/8 inch to the back side. And match that bottom edge with the second pocket liner. Okay, so now we're going to flip it so it is right side face up, and then I'm going to take the bottom pocket and fold it up so just the pocket liners are exposed. We're going to sew right at the bottom of the zipper along the right hand edge all the way down, back stitch well here, and sew along this left hand edge and back stitch really well along this pocket bottom. We're going to finish up this back panel. So I've grabbed the bottom strap anchors with the webbing attached and then the top strap anchor. So first things first, we're going to measure up 1 inch from the bottom and we're going to lay, oh, got a little of that stitch in there. We're going to lay the strap anchor with the webbing going up on an angle at that 1 inch mark from the bottom. Go ahead and clip that in place. And we're going to take the opposite side and we're going to lay this one 1 inch up as well. Just like this. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew this in place. I'm going to sew an 1/8 inch from the edge, but then I'm going to come over a 1/4 inch and go back up. Again, these are high stress areas, so we really want to reinforce these triangles as much as possible. But as we're sewing, just make sure not to catch the pocket. It isn't that wide to get caught, but I have sewn it before, so don't do that. Now to assemble the top strap anchor piece, we've got our anchor already prepped. I did lay some double-sided tape along the back side here. So I'm going to peel off the bottom portion and then we're going to measure up from the bottom of the back exterior, so the top of the zipper. We're going to measure up 6 inches and lay this anchor down right at that 6 inch mark. So I'll double check over here. We're level. Okay, press that adhesive down right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the back closure. So that is just this portion, and this is the right side versus the wrong side. So we want it right side face up, and we're going to place it right in the center, lining up with that center mark along the top. So I'm going to drop it down in here, and I'm going to go ahead and peel off now this top adhesive backing. So I'm dropping this all the way down to that folded edge. I want it deep under this strap anchor so that it is situated very securely underneath this piece. So now we're going to take the 10-inch piece of webbing here and we're going to go ahead and loop it like this. We don't want it flipped like that. Determine what side you want face up. It really doesn't matter because one will be seen this way from the front of the bag and one will be seen this way. So we're going to loop it just like this and we're going to lay it just next to our back closure and we're going to push it all the way to the bottom edge here and press that adhesive in place. Now for these backpack straps, what I do want to do is cut a slight angle, very slight, not even 30 degrees, just so it sits under the strap anchor well as well, but we're going to do mirrored. So I'm going to cut it just a smidge this way and then adjust a smidge that way. Just a little. There's nothing, not taking off height or anything. We do want them equal. All right, so now we need to face them wrong side face up because this is going to come up over your back. So we're going to go ahead and take this bottom straight edge and tuck it directly next to the handle here. Butt it up to this bottom edge just like the rest and press into that adhesive. I'm going to do it same thing with this angle. Pressed all the way down and just next to that webbing. So it's coming up on a slight angle off onto your back so that it doesn't have this weird ripple when you try to put it over your shoulder. So as long as they're all tucked deep into the strap anchor, we're going to go ahead and sew this bottom edge an 1/8 inch from the fold, go around the perimeter an 1/8 inch, and then we're going to do a second row of stitching a 1/4 inch below that to secure all of that into place. This part does get kind of cumbersome because the panel is starting to get really big. And then the weight of these backpack straps want to shift as you're moving it under your machine, so it wants to pull out because of the weight of them. So just make sure that you're holding it in place, that everything is still butted up to the bottom edge, and like do your best again to just hold it in place as you go ahead and sew this edge. Now that everything's pretty well stitched in place, the second row is way easier to do because now everything's not going to shift out of place anymore. I definitely prefer these 2 rows of stitching because of this being a high stress point. Again, it is the backpack straps. We want them deep under that strap anchor and the 2 rows of stitching to prevent any chance that the straps could be pulled out over time. Same thing with the webbing. It's all the way down here. We heat sealed it and we've got 2 rows of stitching. And I will say this black thread has been very unforgiving for me. There is a reason why I choose to use thread that blends, let's just say that. All right, so we got our giant backpack straps in there. So now we're going to go ahead and take this right side, fold it down, and we're going to take this right side strap anchor, and we're going to go ahead and take the webbing and we're going to thread it up, not through the first slot, but the second one right here, from the back side and over the bar through the front side. So again, as long as we put our ladder lock on correctly to this piece, when I tug here, it locks in place with tension. That's so important. So once we've got that in place, we're going to do our 1/4 inch double fold and clip. And we're going to repeat that process with this portion, this strap. So go ahead and make sure it's smooth. We don't want it twisted on itself as we're threading, so make sure it's completely straight. Up through the second hole, down through the front, first hole, and tug from the second strap. Does it have tension? Yes, it does. We are good to go. Go ahead and double fold and clip. So now we're going to go ahead to the sewing machine and sew these in place so that they can't come through that and they're secure. All right, that's looking so fun. This back panel is complete. We are going to go ahead and open up our zipper here. Okay, we're going to create the side zipper pockets right now. So it's important to, again, have your right and your left pile oriented correctly how you want your zipper to open and what's on the exterior. So I'm going to set the left pocket aside so we can just focus on this right side. I did already add some of my 1/8 inch double-sided tape. So I'm going to remove the backing on the exterior pocket here, set the pocket liners aside. And now we want our pocket to open with the closure up at the top, right? So we want it to open down to the bottom. So the top needs to be here, but I do find laying it in position easiest when the zipper is open. So now I'm going to have my zipper pull down here, and I'm going to lay this oriented this way in front of me. So now I'm going to find the center notch that we marked on this zipper, and I'm going to lay it face down on the center marking that we had on our exterior. It's kind of hard to see because the elastic is covering it, but that center marking on there is important. So now I'm just going to follow the curve here along this top portion. There. And same thing down here. Now on the petite version, which is what I am making, I do have a little bit of overhang on my zipper tabs, so I'm going to go ahead and trim it up even with the edges here shortly after. But for the standard size, it is a pretty great fit. So just make sure it's pretty even on the both sides and that it's centered right. So now we're going to take one of the liners and I'm going to put it on top. You can use clips, double-sided tape. If you're not doing the double-sided tape, please baste this in place so your zipper does not shift while we sew this. We want a nice zipper install for this section. Just lining up those center marks and this curved edge. There we go. All right, now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance just along that curved edge. We're doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance for the zipper installs. I'm coming up to my elastic, which is a stress point, so I'm going to back stitch over that elastic piece. Coming up on my zipper pull, so I do need to drop my needle down and move the zipper out of the way. Okay, so now we can go ahead and pop this right side out here. Just going to finger press these seams away from the zipper really well because I'm not going to top stitch this. If you feel so inclined and you have to do it, go for it. But I didn't want to take in any, lose any depth from my pocket, so I'm not top stitching. I'm just finger pressing this area really well. Make sure that looks nice so far. So now I've got the second lining piece ready to go, but I'm going to go ahead and just trim the bottom of these tabs so it is flush with the bottom edge of that. This one's pretty close, so that's good. All right, so again, I just find it easier when my zipper is open. I'm going to lay this face up in front of me. I do have that double-sided adhesive on here. Get this backing off first. All right, now we're going to lay it right side face up on the right side of this lining piece. We're going to take that center mark here and line it up right there. And just follow that edge. Okay, now I'm just going to baste this in place. An 1/8 inch from the edge here. Okay, so as long as you have your pieces oriented correctly, you should have a lined inner portion and a lined portion there. So this pocket is done. We're going to repeat the same process with the left side. Now I'm grabbing the center front main body and then orienting the side zipper pockets the way they should be. I did add my double-sided tape. So again, starting with that right-sided pocket here. We're going to remove this backing, and we do have our center notch here. So I find this, again, easier if my zipper is undone. So I'm going to find the center notch here, and I'm going to lay it right down, right sides facing at that notch. So I usually will pinch there and along the bottom, and I bring up the top here and pinch, and then I just kind of ease in the rest here. Okay, so it's starting to take shape here. So when we go to the sewing machine, you may want to be inclined to sew it from this little curved side, but you can't catch if you're doing any pleating accidentally on this back side. So when I go to the sewing machine, I do prefer this to be side up so that I can sew here and smooth out any ripples as I go around this tight curve so that I don't accidentally create pleats on the front main body that you will see at the end of the bag. Okay, so it's the front main body that is side up, sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. My zipper pull is right here, so I have to move that out of the way first. Now this first portion is pretty simple, it's a straight edge, but it does get a little more confusing as you go around the curve. So just go slow and make sure to keep the edges aligned. Anytime you stop, keep your needle down and then start to open up that zipper pocket so that zipper is out of the way. Finger press any pleats flat so you're not sewing them. And keep moving that top portion out of the way so it sews flat. No pleats. Okay, here's the moment of truth when you open this up and take a peek. You don't want to see that you caught any ripples, so check your edge there. Do you see any pleats? Nope, we're good. So we're not doing any top stitching on this piece either, so we're just giving it a nice finger press. We want the seam going up and out. So I'm just finger pressing that well like that. Now we are going to go ahead and repeat with the left pocket. Now when I sew the left pocket on, I'm starting with the curve size, so that part is a little bit harder. But again, we want this body portion face up, so just go slow around that curve, and then once you get past that curve, it's smooth sailing. Keep my zipper pocket unzipped so I can pull it out of the way here. Just go slow, we don't want these pleats, so we just have to take our time to smooth out the material. Okay, now I'm coming along that straight edge, so this part's much easier. Double check for any pleats and finger press the seam up. All right, you thought that probably was pretty hard, and it wasn't, was it? Looks harder than it is. So now we just need to close off these pockets. So we're going to go ahead and flip it to the back side, and we're going to start in the bottom corner, lining up all of these edges first. Go ahead and clip there, and then clip up the long side, keeping them all lined up. And because we did these little tapered zipper tabs, you shouldn't have excess fabric, but anything that you do and you need to form a pleat, we're pushing up. So we're going to hold the seam allowance up, and we're going to pinch this portion up. So it kind of folds it in half there. And we're going to do the same thing along this bottom edge. So we want to line up all those layers, clip, clip, and then we're going to push this seam open. This also has the tapered zipper tab, so you shouldn't have any excess material, but again, it gets pushed that way if you do. And then just repeat with this side. Now I do like to sew with the wrong side face up so I can make sure that my seams are being sewn in the right direction. So I'm just gonna stitch down all the layers 1/8 inch from the edge. Now grab the front closure. We want it wrong side face up. So we're going to go ahead and see the wrong side of these prongs, and we're going to lay it down at the center mark on the top portion of this. So I'm going to leave it overhang about 1/4 inch. We're going to sew that in place, and then we're going to go ahead and lay our front top face down, lining up those center markings, and sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance. We are using a 3/8 inch seam allowance for this portion. As I come up to the closure piece, I will backstitch while I'm over that. Reinforce that webbing. Now I want to go ahead and push the topper up, and as well as this, and have the seam go down. So I'm going to finger press this well with the seam down. And now on this front main body, just below that seam, I'm going to top stitch an 1/8 inch. I'm taking the back panel and the front panel, they should be perfectly matched in height, and I'm laying it down on top of the front main body, and I've clipped these long edges in place, right sides together. I started with the elastic portion and the zipper tab here on that back pocket, and I centered it right inside there. Then I clipped the bottom edge and the top edge and eased in the rest. It should be a perfect fit. So we do the same thing on this side. We've got our zipper tab here, right in the center of that, and clip. And we're going to start at the bottom here and the top. As long as you were accurate on your seam allowance installing that back pocket, it's a perfect fit. But if for some reason you took it too tight or too loose of a seam allowance, and you're going to need to trim the front or the back panel to meet and join equally, then you'll want to line up these landmarks first and determine which end is off before you trim. Okay, so now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew each long end using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. As we get down to our bottom strap anchor here, you can see those 2 reinforcement stitches. Now we're going to go a 3rd stitch down this length. We will not be trimming this seam allowance at all, because we do not want to cut off any of our reinforcement stitches. Back stitching right where the elastic goes in for the tension when you go in and out with your water bottle. And then this is where my strap anchor is, but it's on the back side. So 3rd row of stitching. Okay, let's add the bottom base. So I'm leaving it wrong side face out. This is the curved front, this is the straight edge back laying down. So we've got a straight edge of the bottom base and then the curve of the front. So I'm going to pull this center mark and lay it right sides facing on the center mark here. You can clip, you can use double-sided tape, whatever you want. Today I'm going to go ahead and use a stapler. My seam allowance is going to be 3/8 inch, so I want to get as close to this edge as possible with my staples. I just want to keep it from shifting. I do not want it in my seam allowance, and I will have to remove them later. So I'm going to flip it back to the flat edge side of the back panel and the bottom base and clip those landmarks in place. Okay? So now I'm just going to go ahead and keep clipping or stapling these edges in place. Okay, so as I was stapling the base in place, I pressed these seams out in place here. I do prefer to sew with the bottom base face down and then sew it like this as I'm kind of crumpling the top of the bag. This way I can prevent any pleats from forming on the front portion. You could cut little snips in this area too if you find it easier going around the curve. I wouldn't cut snips in this bottom part where the mesh is. And I also wouldn't stress about creating pleats on this side because that mesh will kind of camouflage that. So here we're going to go. I'm going to start manhandling this bag. We're going to do a 3/8 inch seam allowance. This is the part I want to be mindful where I'm not forming pleats because this will be seen on the front of the bag. Do your best to kind of finger press it smooth. Now I'm back where the mesh is, so if a little itty bitty pleats form, I'm not going to lose sleep over it here. Okay, I can feel my buckle for my webbing, so make sure you get that out of the way. You don't want to add it in your seam. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim down my seam allowance. However, I am not going to trim any of this mesh portion because I don't want to cut off the reinforcement stitches, so I'll have to remove those staples. All right, I quickly turned it right side out because I do want to take a peek at these bottom edges, make sure I caught all layers, there's no unwanted pleats that I didn't mean to do, so looks good. Now I have to turn it wrong side out for the next step. Okay, so now we're left with assembling the interior, which is just like we just did with the exterior. It's going to go way faster. You have two identical pieces. This is the back wall, this is now the front wall. Just pretend like there were zipper pockets like the exterior. So we're going to take the second piece and we're going to fold it long sides down with the wrong sides facing, just like this. And I'm going to be mindful of my directional print. So I want his face face up versus the wrong side this way. So we're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance along this top folded edge. Now I just created this little pocket. I'm going to line up these center marks along the bottom and clip, and then along these edges. Clip through all layers. And now just sew these 3 edges 1/8 inch from the edge. The interior doesn't have any landmarks to be mindful of, but they are the same height. So go ahead and just line up these long edges and clip just like we did before. Now, we're going to go ahead and sew up these long edges. However, we're going to start at the top again, and we're going to angle in a 1/2 inch along the bottom. So it'll start off at 3/8 inch along the top, angle in, and end up at a 1/2 inch on each bottom edge. Now make sure you're oriented correctly where the pocket is along this edge and not along this edge, so that when we add the bottom base, we're adding it to the actual bottom of the bag. So just like with the exterior, we're going to line up the flat edge along the main body here, clip, and then we're going to flip it around and clip both center landmarks and then clip the rest. I do find that because there's no mesh and side pockets or anything additional, we can cut little 1/4 inch snips along this bottom edge. It will help kind of ease around the corner. And then I'm going to sew it the same way with the bottom base against my machine. And I do not sweat it if I end up creating pleats going around these curves, because it's going to be deep inside the bag. Nobody will ever see it. So don't stress about curves. I know people get really worried about adding bottom curved bases to bags, but this is one of those where you just don't worry about it. So just stapled the base in place. I have not stitched it yet, but I did want to point out that I did trim down the seam allowances on the liner only, because there were no real reinforcement stitches that we were worried about trimming off. But I stopped trimming about 1 inch from the edge. So leave this portion untrimmed, and then go ahead and trim it down to between 1/8 and 1/4 inch all the way down. Just trim down the seam allowance around my base. So now I do need to turn this portion of the bag right side out. Okay, now we got to go grab our exterior and put the lining inside the exterior and sew that top edge. So far you've probably noticed that the exterior is 2 inches taller than the liner. That is expected, that is what we want. So leaving the exterior wrong side face out and the interior right side face out, we're going to drop the lining inside the bag following the curves. So the front curve of the liner will follow the front curve of the exterior. We got to drop this in. Tuck it in there. Now we got to find our landmarks. So got to find that back wall seams and the back wall seams of the exterior. I'm going to go ahead and press my seams open and line them up here, just like so, and then I'm going to clip that. Same thing here. Press your seams open. And clip. Now I'm going to clip these center notch marks here. Flip it around and do the same thing up here. Now that those landmarks are clipped, we'll go ahead and pull those edges taut and clip the remaining perimeter. Now that they're all clipped in place, we're going to go ahead and sew in the rounds. So I'm just going to, if you have a cylinder arm, or you can take the piece off of your machine and then just thread it on, you can sew from the outside, but I'm going to sew on the inside. We're doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance along this top edge. When you come up to your side seams, make sure to keep those pressed open. right, we are not going to trim the seam allowance, so we're going to go ahead and pull the lining out from inside there, and we'll go ahead and press these seams open and then turn it, the whole bag, through this bottom pocket. And hopefully we left our zipper open. Yes. We are just about done, guys. So I've so far done my best to finger press those joining seams open to reduce bulk. If you can press your iron to your material without melting it, you can use your iron. Otherwise, just finger press the best that you can. Also, depending on your materials, sometimes I'll just throw my hair dryer in here to blast it with heat, and it makes it super soft and buttery and way easier to turn. So if you're dealing with some thick, stiff materials like waxed canvas or waterproof canvas, blast it with heat first. All right, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and tuck the lining inside the bag. All right, here's where you gotta use the full length of your arm to pull on the exterior only to get it seated nice and deep in the bag, because like I said, with the interior being 2 inches shorter than the exterior, the lining is the exterior will roll a little bit to the interior, and that is what we want. So I don't want to pull on both, I just want to pull on the exterior. This next part, you could even put something heavy in your backpack to just make sure the lining is seated deep. And then we're going to go ahead and press this top edge with an iron. You can top stitch this area if you'd like. I generally don't. So I will put my pressing mat inside and then press this edge. And then we can go ahead and either roll it or just tuck it closed. Voila! I just closed that zipper pocket, stuffed it back in. It is all done. I love it. And look, so cute. Now, if you made your sternum strap, let's go ahead and add it. So typically it's added to the lower portion or that second portion. All you're going to do is just kind of thread this through here. These are pretty stiff, so sometimes this portion can just be a little tough. Just like that. Make sure it's not twisted. Going on the same loop, repeat. There we go. Voila! All done.